You're listening to Micras Cast, the podcast about all things Micras.
Well, that's really nerdy.
Nerdy or not, here we go. This is Micras Cast with your host, Ed. Intellectual, stimulating conversation.
Hello. This is the long-awaited third episode of Micras Cast, and I am your host, Edgard Carrillo. Thank you for listening. I still laugh at that intro. I don't care how many times I've listened to it while editing things. I just still laugh at it. Okay, so for today's intellectual and stimulating conversation, we will have the topic of creativity. We're going to talk about where people get their inspiration from, where they get ideas for events or developments in their nations. We talk about how their nation started. We delve a little into what people do to break creative blocks and how that relates to their experiences in Micras. All of that. We also, and I have to apologize in advance, we talked about coronavirus, and I've kind of made it a rule to avoid Miss Rona in our podcasts because I want this to be a stress-free listen for people, but I kept the conversation because it was just really funny. We had a lot of fun talking about coronavirus, doomsday preppers, and yes, we threw a lot of shade at Stormark towards the end. And I kept all of that in the podcast because it was just really funny. So it is what it is. So without further ado, here is the third episode of Micras Cast. Thank you.
So we are live. This is the third episode of Micras Cast. With us today, we have Nikola, leader of Krasnokoria.
Ciao.
We have with us former leader of the Shyriath Ghoul, involved for many years in Shyriath.
Greetings all.
And we have with us the Emperor of Natopia, the wonderful Nate.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And we have Lord Furniture, Overlord of all things technological on Micras, Ari. Welcome.
And for now, I'm not sure if this will work at all, though.
Okay, and then we have the wonderful Kaiser, the former Kaiser Redquill, good friend and often a partner in crime in all things Goldshirian, Mr. Ryker.
Hello.
All right, so we'll get started. This will be the third episode of Micras Cast, and one subject that a lot of people have reached out to me to do an episode on is creativity. What inspires people to create, to do things in their micronations, where they get their inspiration from. And I'm going to toss a question out to start this conversation. Where do you guys get inspiration from? And I'll start with Shyriath. Go ahead.
Well, I came into Micronations very much from the world building and role playing side of things. I've pulled a lot of inspiration from world building stuff I've done, and a lot of the inspiration for that comes from a lot of classic fantasy stuff. I was big into Lord of the Rings when I was younger.
Of course.
David Eddings' books, Belgariad and the Malorion. That's basically.
Okay. Ryker, how about you? Where do you get inspiration for your projects?
Usually just from, like, if I see something cool on Netflix or any old place, I'll just say, oh, that seems interesting, but I wonder how else it could be construed. Because I like thinking about what could go wrong in some of these situations. Like, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but sometimes I'll see something, it's like a really cool idea, but the way that the story is executed and the way that people react to it isn't what I think would happen exactly. So I like to explore like a way that you wouldn't think of it right off the bat, but you would still be like, oh, you know what, that probably would actually be a plausible like circumstance if that technology existed or something like along those lines.
Mm-hmm. And Nikola, how about you? Where did you get the idea to put together Krasnokoria? I know that you work with a bunch of other people that are also involving Krasnokoria. What prompted you to start your country?
Well, Krasnokoria just basically a Micras version of Yugoslavia.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, like when I founded Korea, it was pretty much like mixing together Serbia, France, and Greece,
Okay.
which was kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
And then Krasnarus came,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the war against the Florians, and then we decided to slowly emerge into one nation. Like in real life, the Serbs and Croats and Bosnians united into one nation, and they founded Yugoslavia. So we founded Krasnor Korea.
Okay.
That's basically it.
Okay. And Ari, you have started up some things back in I don't know if it's still called Brookshire. Again, sorry if people take offense to my pronunciation of that. Where do you get your inspiration from? Because I have been seeing you work on the wiki on the Outside Stray Light series. Correct me if that's the wrong name, but I'm always curious to hear where you get your inspiration because you're doing a lot of things that like I haven't seen anyone else do, and it looks really cool.
Thing is, all of my plans are ones that are kind of not really relevant to global politics or even regional politics. They're kind of stuff that's hidden, or there's like one person in this place who's doing a really weird thing, and I want to write about that one person. So it doesn't really matter that much who actually owns the land. Although, well, that said, there is going to be the mayor of Citadel. I know that Shyriath is at least one person who knows what there used to be in Citadel, and that's pretty much what's still going to happen in there. But that said, the name of the project is Outside Stray-Light, and that pretty much means that the part that's in Ransenara is it'll make up some of it, but it's kind of a side detail. Or at least it's supposed to be kind of a side detail.
That's really cool. I like that. And Nate, you've been doing Natopia for so long, and Natopia is definitely one of the more unique nations because it's very eclectic. Where did you get the inspiration from? Just tell me about where you got the inspiration to do Natopia back in the day.
Thanks for that so long part, by the way.
Hey, I mean, like, I have probably been around for about the same time as you, so, like, no shade.
Right. Well, Natopia started as a kind of a joke between friends in high school, so I think its quirkiness kind of stems from teenagers just being weird, and it's kind of snowballed over the years. With different people adding their weirdness overall, and it's kind of a place where you can kind of do what you want, within reason, as long as you can justify why this would be a culture that would exist in this island or this, deserted woodland area or whatever you want to do. So, I think that kind of contributes to its kind of patchwork quality, if that. So I can't take all the credit, but definitely try to foster that kind of almost anything goes attitude.
Okay. Another question for everyone here. When you guys are blocked creatively, when you feel like you may have run out of ideas, like I know that I struggle with this. I'm struggling with it right now. I feel like I've kind of gotten dry with ideas for Ransenar and the Wetchus, for example. What do you guys do? Like I take a little bit after Ryker's method where like I'll sit and watch some Netflix, pull up a documentary or something. Let's start with Shyriath. What do you do when you experience a writer's block?
I guess broadly I do something similar in that I try to relax and get my mind off of things and sort of try to reset myself to get to a point where I can start thinking about things again. My problem is that it tends to turn into longer and longer periods where I don't actually do anything. I am a lazy person at heart. So
I can relate to that.
That probably has something to do with why I've ended up spending long periods of time away from micronations. Well, I've lost inspiration. I'm not getting it back. I don't really feel like working all that hard to get it back. And to be fair, a lot of that has to do with things like work and, But aside from that, a lot of what I do ends up having to coming from contemplating consequences. So if I'm actively trying to seek inspiration, I kind of go through a series of, okay, what situation are things in now? If this happened, how would that go? What would the consequences be? Can we construct a chain of possible events from that?
I like that, contemplating consequences. More often than not, it seems for me, I'll just put something together, and if it sounds good to me, it just sounds good, and I just go for it. And I like that that sounds, calling it contemplating consequences, it sounds like some actual thought was put into it rather than I have an idea, I'm just gonna word vomit all over the wiki and see what happens. Riker, how about you? What do you do when you don't have creative juices flowing? Like, what do you do?
I usually just sit down and play some video games. A lot of times I find that 4X type deals like Stellaris or simulations like RimWorld help. Maybe because I miss the war crimes. I think that's a lot of what Micras is, really. You come for the world building, you stay for the war crimes. But it's...
Come for the world building, stay for the war crimes.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that as a... I'm going to have to extricate that and use that as part of the soundboard at some point.
Whenever we talk about the auspicious occasion. But yeah, sometimes just like you make little stories in your heads about like little video game bits that you play that leave something to be imagined, and then you kind of think about that on your off time when you're not playing or when you're just working on something else, and then you're like, oh, you know, that would actually be a pretty interesting idea, and then you kind of gets the ball rolling, and usually it fizzles out, but sometimes it leads to something else.
Mm-hmm. And Nikola, how about you? What do you do when you've run out of ideas? Maybe invade Floria?
Perhaps, but the main issue of myself is being lazy. I basically, in any given time, I have an idea about making some story. It's just me being lazy to like assemble a good story that will sound good on the wiki page. So I don't know what else to say.
Well, I feel like I do something similar myself as well. Just word vomit on the wiki and hope that it looks and sounds okay. Ari, if you're still with us, what do you do when you've run out of ideas?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer a question about creativity, because really the thing that I've been doing on the wiki recently, that's basically the only thing that I've done in Micronations in like 10 years. And honestly, even the things in Brookshire, those are actually just stuff that is from at least 10 years ago. The way that I thought of those ideas in the first place, that was basically that I would read about concepts, I would listen to people talk about stuff, and I would misread them, I would mishear them, I would misunderstand them, and then I would think, hey, the way that I thought that this thing worked is actually cooler than the way that it actually works. And then I try to write that, and that's basically my method.
Nate, what do you do when you're dry with ideas?
Usually I just leave Micronations and not tell anyone and hope nobody notices I'm gone for a while. And then usually that gives me time to kind of, either watch a movie or read a book. Well, not read a book, who am I kidding? Or something like that, or just, play a game, something that kind of triggers something that inspires me to kind of maybe mix and match something that's currently going on that has gone stale or something, and well, what if we made them do this or whatever and see what happens. And sometimes that turns out to be like wet spaghetti on the wall, and then undo it in a few months, but but I guess something's better than nothing at that point when you've been creatively stuck for a while. So
I have trouble maintaining a consistent output of things for all three of my projects. And recently I've kind of just been realizing that I might be a little overextended. But my process, the way that I do things is I have really bad ADHD, and I'm just like, I'll tend to hyper focus on Alduria, for example. I'll hyper focus on Alduria, and I'll basically empty whatever it is that I have on my mind. And then once I'm dry, I move on to Ransonar, for example, and I start writing about the elections. And then like once I've reached the end of my rope there, I'll move on to the wet juice and start doing stuff there. And it's not always very consistent, but I just jump around based on how inspiration strikes. I feel like each project kind of scratches a different itch for creativity for me, but like I've come to realize that maintaining 3 projects is a bit much.
Yeah, it's hard to balance, but yeah, I definitely agree with what you mean by different projects can only happen in different countries. And then I think we all are guilty of spreading ourselves too thin sometimes because we see a shiny
I
new
mean, Brexit
project
does
over
kind of
there.
sound like a
Oh, I
breakfast
can really
cereal.
do that, and then you just run out of steam real quick.
Yeah, for sure. Nikola, what are some things that like you have been drawing inspiration from lately? Because I have seen that Krasnokoria is pretty involved with sports in Micras. I've also noticed that there's a lot of development going on with like the military and all that. So like, what have you been watching lately, or like what have you been reading lately that has kind of like sparked you to like do things?
Uh, well, I don't know what to say. Well, like, Krasnokoria is basically like more than 50% sports only.
For a lot of countries, sports is their main thing, and like that's I consider it just as good as me writing about elections. Like
Right. Well, that is true that many countries on Micros are just basically majority sports. So is Krasnokoria at this point.
yeah.
But I always had a feeling that that's wrong and that the nation shouldn't just rely on sports over here. So, yeah, I'm developing military as well, but I don't know how to explain this. Basically, I just, like any other day, regular day, I just sit on my computer and then I see something on the internet or I watch some TV series. Yeah, I'm now in the military vibe, and I'm gonna develop military that day. But tomorrow that it just lost. I do not
hmm
have inspiration anymore. So I'm developing not only military but basically a language, culture, tradition, religion, everything of that. But I just lose inspiration after a very, very short amount of time.
hmm I sometimes find myself remembering some of the things that I used to do when I would run out of inspiration in my nations when I first started. Like I would randomly start a war with someone, or I would I would just like create what insiders know is like an astroturf insurgency or something. But like everyone on the outside looking in probably thinks, oh, they're headed towards a civil war. So, Ryker, what I have noticed that like you've kind of been taking a step back from things lately in the sense that like you don't have your own independent project anymore. It seems like you're working now inside of Elwyn. Do you have any plans for the future of the Sovereign Confederation?
Well, right now I'm just kind of mellowing everything down because I'm about to start getting back into school here in the next month or so.
Okay.
So I'm waiting to kind of see how I can handle the course load, and
Of
then
course.
I'm gonna use that to gauge how involved I can be in projects. But right now, I've just kind of basically put everything on autopilot so it can function without me, in essence.
hmm
And I've mostly just
Yeah,
been
I understand.
focusing what effort I can spare into the MCS Council. A lot going on there these days.
Yeah, I've kind of run through all of my questions. So, like, I think what I'll do now, I always have some time towards the end to let everyone talk about what is happening in their lives, what's happening in their projects, give us a current events in your nation thing. So I'll go around and do that, and then I'll just open it up just for us to like talk about whatever. I'll start with Nikola. Nikola, what is going on right now in Krasnokoria?
Well, in Krasnokoria, what can there happen? Like sports. But else, I was thinking with Ned to maybe start developing something because we were literally like scared. We got really scared when those discussions about changing rules for activity went up. We were like, and we were like, we gotta do something to just stay afloat.
Yeah. Shyriath, I see that you currently don't have a project right now. Do you have anything in mind? Like, is anything coming down the pipeline? Will you be involved in Shyriath again? Like, what's going on with you?
I actually have been working a little bit in Kolgakia to try to keep it afloat since Krasny doesn't seem to be around.
Yeah.
So I'll try to keep fiddling around with that. As for the rest, I would like to do some more stuff with the Serid at some point. I don't know if now is.
Which, by the way, I loved.
I had a lot of fun with the Serid. They're very fun to work with. But doing something with them right now might be a little awkward since the bulk of their population is now in a spot that another nation is occupying, and I don't know if I want to mess with that too much.
Okay.
But still, I think I might do some not necessarily national things with them, possibly. It like the occasional Serid tweet on Twitter.
Yes.
I like to imagine that one single solitary Ser somewhere out there has gotten hold of a mobile phone and is powering it by a hamster wheel or something. I don't know.
Oh, Gilligan's Island contraption.
Yeah, and has just gotten addicted to social media somehow. How he types with his claws, I don't know, but very mysterious.
Because that is my favorite part of the Aldurian elections when the Serid tweet about just the process. To me, it's an interesting perspective coming from them when they see Aldurian politicians basically throwing the kitchen sink at each other in the election, and then you see a tweet from the Serid, and it just like provides much needed levity in what sometimes feels like the country is about to go into a civil war if someone doesn't get their way in the election.
Yeah, although to be fair, the Serid probably find that process very familiar. They are prone to settle matters through fights and
Okay.
consider this a perfectly natural way. Civil war would be a bit much. I think they would agree. But getting into a fist fight with your political opponent and punching his teeth out would be considered a perfectly legitimate part of the political process, I think.
And now on pay-per-view and Aldurian television. And Nate, what's going on in Natopia? What's been new? Natopia, I think, like in the public-facing stuff, looks very quiet. But since I'm chancellor there, in the behind-the-scene, like Natopian only channels, there's been a lot of activity.
Yeah, I think one of the main projects we've been working on is trying to convert the legislature, the frenzy, into a simulated one, because for the longest time the frenzy has been composed of real people, which now that there are less and less active people has been kind of a lingering problem. And it also is awkward to have a nation of 300 million people with a legislature of 5 representatives or something. It just doesn't really it's not too believable. So we tried a thing where we basically made one person count as 10 different, I guess we used to call them puppets or papals or something. I don't know if we still call them that.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're trying to add an upper house and a lower house and just make it as complicated as possible, because why not do that when you have no energy to do anything else? Why not make it more complicated? So, but that's the current project. And then there's some colonization efforts going on Cibola, and I think there's going to be some Alexandrian sanctuary cities or something set up for them to
My heart.
to return to
My heart goes pitter patter.
wherever they've been, just wandering the green for I don't know how many years it's been since the flu. And I don't know how many other countries have even occupied that part of the continent since then, but the Alexandrians will return.
Oh, my heart goes pitter patter. I really regret, in hindsight, dissolving Alexandria. I think that was just like a low point of creativity and effort for me. It just be at sometimes it felt like I was operating this machine that had become too big for me to operate, and I got desperate. So I still like regret that decision. But so Ryker, you mentioned that as you kind of figure out where you're gonna go with school and everything, that like you'll step back and reassess. Do you have any ideas for the future? Anything that like might not even be formed in your head yet, but like that you'd like to try sometime? Like anything like that?
Well, I'm definitely planning on really diving into the kind of transhuman aspect that I've started setting up in the
Oh yeah.
Scar, but I don't know when I'll be able to get to that. But that's definitely something that's interested me for a very long time, is how, like, because Goldshire is a pretty traditional place. So I like the idea of, like, having to rectify this rolling fields of wheat and old farmer Joe trying to grapple with the, like, this oncoming societal shift towards, like, oh, when you die, you turn into a computer, and they just kind of have to figure out where they stand in all of that. Because I mean, that's always interested me, because I think that we're eventually going to have to deal with that in the real world in my lifetime. So
Yeah.
I've always liked thinking about that, and how a society rooted in tradition, like so many are, would cope.
Okay. Yeah, because that's also a theme in Ransonar, because Goldshire has been so rooted in tradition for so long, and then all of a sudden you have Ransonar coming in, the Imperial Democratic Party setting up a what turns out to be a pretty democratic state for the area when you take into account its history. And I always imagine that there's like a huge Luddite movement in the countryside. So, like, for example, I just imagine the Ransanari government sending people out into the rural areas for the census. And these people tar and fettering the shit out of the people that come in to count people. Because, like, no, we don't want you here. You bring technology. Get the fuck out.
That's a big reason I like Goldshire, is because you can always just reset it, and it jives with the story. You can always just say, oh yeah, and then the king changed, and everyone went back to the way things were because they liked it better that way, anyways.
And Ari, where are you going to take the Outside Straight Light series? Like, what do you have in mind for its future?
I have some ideas, but it's kind of seat of my pants. I mean, in the way that I've been writing it so far, I don't like being tied to just one plan or just one way that things might go. I like to write, there's something that might happen, there's something that a person might do in Straylight. So, we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Okay, cool. Because I've been liking what I've been reading in the wiki. It looks cool and interesting. I like it.
I think I remembered something that I wanted to say during all this when you mentioned the theme being creativity. And I think a big thing that, at least for me, kind of sparked creativity is when something really important is happening somewhere else in the real world that I can kind of just read the comments I've read it on and kind of see the headlines and then come to my own conclusions without... So, like, I know I don't see the full picture, and I like it that way just because then I can kind of think of ways to interpret it into a different story, sort of. So that, for me, that, like, with Brexit, I think that's a big contributor to how Kildare was handled, because all of that was going on.
Okay.
And the news was just covering it over and over again. So there was kind of like, I feel like that's a big contributor to how this huge split in Shyriath was taken by everyone.
Okay. Because like on Brexit, a quick anecdote. I have a young cousin. He's probably like 8 or 9 now. And he was recently gifted one of those like Chrome books, that like you used to basically just get on the internet and like use the Google Docs and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's like bare bones.
Yeah. And he has been reading the news online. And I was talking to him a while back, and he goes, people in Great Britain are arguing over breakfast. I'm like, breakfast? They're arguing over breakfast. What do you mean? Well, they're saying that, that the UK wants to leave breakfast. And I'm like, I don't understand. I was so stumped. I didn't know what he was talking about. They want to leave breakfast. And he goes, but breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I'm like, oh, I get what you mean now. Right?
It's a special kind of Chex Mix that causes everyone to argue at breakfast.
Oh, man. Because, like, it just seemed like for a long time that, like, you couldn't avoid reading about it, even if you actively tried to.
Right. And I feel like that sort of pattern can like be recognized elsewhere. I think it was it during Ebola that there was some like the cabbage fever or something along those lines, or was that swine flu? It was before I was here, but I've heard tales from the ancients.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like with the coronavirus, it's interesting though, because you'd think that would like really get everyone's gears rolling, but I think because it's affecting everyone, nobody wants to interpret it because they're just like, no, it's here, it sucks.
Yeah, I have been having a little bit of a hard time dealing with reality, with everything that's going on, and I currently don't have bandwidth to simulate a pandemic in Micras because, like many people, I'm on Micras to kind of escape things a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone would lose their mind. Yeah, I get it.
So, like, if I have to contend with a fucking pandemic in Micras too, I'm just gonna no.
The entire community would shut it down.
Right? Like, I mean, I already lost Alexandria to one.
And there's so many pandemics anyway on Micras. It's
Right.
not even an original story.
Exactly. Like, because like I think that it was Ned from Krasnokoria and Edwin. They both had ideas to start a pandemic, and then I told them in probably what was too forceful language, because sometimes I just, I could probably be nicer. I'm like, could you please not do this? Could you please not do this? Oh, because I haven't been dealing with this shit well.
Just dealing with it is enough at this point. Every day you wake up and you don't run into traffic.
Yeah.
I think that's a win.
I mean, there are definitely so pros and cons. I have a neighbor downstairs in the unit below us, so I live in an apartment building in Arlington, Virginia. I don't know what the hell they're doing on the weekends between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., but all I hear is drilling.
They're setting their bunker up for the end times.
And it's deafening. They're setting up the fallback positions for when the zombies break in. That's probably Ryker. I think you got something there.
Atomic bunker.
Yeah, there's just concrete fortifications, reinforced steel beams everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just.
They've been stockpiling canned food for weeks.
Oh gosh. Do you know what I've started watching? Doomsday Preppers. And
that's a little guilty pleasure for sure.
Right? And like, I understand wanting to prepare for things, and I see the merit of it, but some of these people prepare for the most like specific, outlandish situations in the most crazy ways. Oh, I'm preparing for, all of our national nuclear power plants exploding at the same time. It's like, no.
I mean, the more specific you are, the better the I told you so will feel if it happens.
Oh, because some of these people, I feel bad for the ones that have kids. Like the trauma that these parents are inflicting on these little kids that like they can't have a normal childhood just running around climbing trees. No, you have to learn how to wield this AR-15 to defend the family.
I'm probably on the opposite end of the survivalist scale. I've pretty much accepted the fact that if the apocalypse comes, I'm dead. Someone is going to butcher me for meat and put me in a freezer, and that's what's going to happen.
Oh my gosh, maybe
I
you
think
should
I'm
let.
too lean for meat.
Oh, maybe you should let Alex Jones know. I don't know if you guys have seen. I saw a clip of one of his recent shows where he's like, you know, chest all puffy. I've been sizing up my neighbors. I'm not going to let my daughter starve. And he talks about eating up his neighbors, that he looks at his
God.
neighbors and hopes that they fatten up so that he can kill them to feed his daughters. And I'm like, dude, you probably live down the street from a food lion. Like, can't you just go to the grocery store?
I think he's just a closet cannibal.
Well, I don't know
Just
how.
waiting for the day that it's accepted.
Because, I don't know how far in the closet he is now, because he's pretty open about it now.
It's his version of it's the cannibal version of Guy Liner. He's just talking about it low key.
Guy liner.
He's like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if I ate my neighbors? Wouldn't it be kind of cute?
Felt cute, might eat you later.
Woo.
No, but yeah, this is a no reality. Nikola, you're over in Serbia. How are things going on over there with this whole coronavirus thing?
Well, we reached the peak few days ago, maybe even more than a week. So we have more patients recovered than the new cases right now. And
That's
since
good.
like a week or two ago, the business is open, the curfew is no more, and everything is back to life. It's just that it is recommended to wear a mask, which about 80% of population who goes out right now has, and just the social distancing, and that's it. We're doing fine.
I am so jealous because that shit's not happening here. That shit is not happening here.
Yeah.
It's
Coronavirus.
trying to happen here.
Well, yeah. Coronavirus here in the United States has become a political football, and it's ridiculous.
Oof.
People are breaking people's arms. And they're
Yeah.
being made to wear masks in Target. It's ridiculous.
I'm done. I'm done with my state right now. We're just trying to rush into it, and I think I just read that we just hit a peak 14 days after opening in cases. Like, I don't know. I've just been staying inside and looking at everyone else. Like, no, you guys have fun. I'll just stay here. Report back in a couple months.
Yeah.
Tell me how it is.
Yeah. I I live in the DC area, and we were supposed, well, at least the mayor of DC, who, by the way, her name is Muriel Bowser, and you can fact check me, it's for real. Her last name is Bowser. I think we were supposed to open yesterday, and last minute she extended the stay at home thing. And Shy, you're still in Maryland, right?
I am still in Maryland, yes.
So are you, I don't remember, are you in Montgomery County? Because I feel like I heard Governor Hogan in Maryland say that he was opening the state.
It's what they're doing is they're opening things in phases. First phase officially went into effect yesterday at 5 p.m. I haven't been paying much attention to it because it's not going to change anything that I'm doing, but there's going to be more outdoor activity allowed. I think there's a few kinds of businesses that are going to be allowed to open. But no, I'm in Harford County, so I'm well away from the DC area.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Montgomery and maybe Prince George's they were extending their measures or something.
Because
They've kind of given it over into the hands of the counties, more or less.
oh, okay. Well, that makes better sense, I think, because here in Virginia, Governor Blackface, Governor Northam wanted to open the state last week, And then all of the Northern Virginia people, which is like the most heavily populated part of the state. And it's completely different from the rest of Virginia. Like, my boyfriend is a native of Virginia, and he always makes distinctions. Well, I'm from North Virginia, he says. So I think it's funny. It tickles me silly. But apparently the rest of the state is doing okay. But Northern Virginia hasn't even hit a peak yet. Like, the cases are still going up and up and up and up. So they begged the governor to exempt Northern Virginia from any openings.
Yeah, which makes sense, to be perfectly honest. There seems to be a definite urban-rural divide sort of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
The rural counties are like, oh well, we're not that bad. Why don't we open? And
Yeah, and I get that. Ari, how are you holding up? I don't know where you're at. Are you in Finland?
Yeah, that's correct.
So how are you braving this?
I mean, it's going to be one of those things that maybe sounds insensitive. I don't know, but to me, it's been like, okay, sitting at home, not really doing anything, or at least not socializing with anyone. That's a noble thing to do. That's a sacrifice. That's something great that you should do for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Sign me up.
Oh, yeah. I bet that this has been a boon for introverts. I know that a lot of the introverts in my life, people that I deeply love and care for, they are kind of loving this, to be honest.
I can speak to that.
yeah, honestly, pretty much the only problem I'm having with it, and it is a big problem for me, is the entire working from home aspect of it. Because for me, my home is where I'm not supposed to be bothered by things like work. It's where I get away from things like work.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that work is happening right in my living room is, I admit, I haven't always been dealing well with that fact.
Okay.
Even if the lack of commute is that part's a plus.
Mm-hmm. And Nate, I might be super outdated. Are you in Missouri?
Yes, I am. Yeah. So we had the same kind of thing where the state opened up like 2 weeks ago while
Fun
cases
times.
were still rising, doubling every day or something. Yeah. But the governor allowed the counties to do their own thing, and I live in St. Louis, which has, I think it has 2/3 of all the cases in the whole state.
Oh, wow.
So we are still under stay at home until Monday.
Okay.
I think. But our cases are still rising, so who knows how what'll happen there. But I think a lot of us are introverts in Micras, and so I think it's not as bad. But like, I think even as an introvert, I think even I get pushed to the limit of being not able to go somewhere or not be able to see people or something like that. So I can empathize with the more social-minded extrovert people, and I know that they're really struggling through all this. But so I'm kind of count myself lucky that I'm not going super stir crazy with all of it. But it's definitely hard to deal with, because when this all started, I thought I'm going to have a lot more time to brain dump all my Notopia or Drachmodan stuff or Goetia or all that stuff and just get it all out and just do it all, because I'll be home all the day. And I was like, yeah, this is great. And then just lost all motivation or had no desire to do it. So
Yeah. And by the way, I've been meaning to ask you. I haven't had a chance to read through your recent stuff on the wiki. What is going on in Drachmodan right now? I see that there seems to be a large-scale intervention by Notopia, and it looks like there might be a civil war going on there.
Yeah, that kind of goes. I think Ryker was mentioning that, like, so many of those Benacia, so many of those countries can be reset, because I envision the populace to be very rural and backwards and easily manipulated by whoever's in power to go their own way. So this is kind of going to be a hard reset into correcting their failures with democracy.
Okay. So, like, what's going to happen?
Well, I usually don't start these things knowing how they're going to end, but The end goal in mind is to return it to be a Nitopian puppet state again, because that was how it started, and that's how it went for a few months. And then I got kind of bored with that idea. I didn't want it to become I didn't want it to be Freulenized, so let it do its own thing. And then I got bored with that, so I thought to myself, well, why would a large country let its little toehold on the continent go astray? And so I was like, wouldn't it be interesting if Nitopia kind of showed its teeth in a limited way for selfish reasons? So we'll see what happens. And it could, because I was toying with either just giving up and letting it go back to red, Shyriath red, or continue it independently more under the thumb of Nitopia. So both options are still valid. We'll see which is more interesting after things play out. That's really how I decide things.
Fair enough. Any last words?
Stay inside. ABC is 2 times.
Yes.
We are missing a Stormark segment in here, aren't we?
Oh.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yes.
Shall we do a dramatic reading of the White Orchids?
I keep threatening that one of these days I'm gonna release an episode, make everyone think that I recorded a group of people talking about something, and it's just going to be me doing a dramatic interpretation of the Ballad of the Bed of Orchids.
God, what a masterpiece.
Plow my vulva!
Longship is just such an interesting euphemism. Because it could be used for both if you think about it. It's got the shape of one, but then it has it's wooden and long on the other hand. So you can really go both ways with it.
If I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, I think that Nikola has Stormark as a very, very close neighbor. Nikola, how do you deal with that? Like, do you guys interact with them at all?
Well, they indeed border us, but I'm aware that we have like a few 100,000 Stormarks in our country, like in the north. But I do not know if they're certainly not behaving like they are in their native country, because our laws don't allow it. Yeah, what I mean. So I don't know. I think they are notable members of our society.
I don't know. With Stormark, it's more of a shame than anything, because they're so big and they're so expansive. It's a shame that it's run by people or a person who knows. It's such a shame that they won't interact with other members of the community in any meaningful way. Like, if you try to interact with them in a meaningful way, they won't give back in a way that you would really deem acceptable or appropriate. And it just seems like such a waste to me, because like Vikings can be interesting, and even horny Vikings can be interesting. But if all you do, like, how about some yes and instead of just, oh, thank you, I'll take that, bye. I'm always willing to give them a chance, but only if they put in some effort.
Yeah, supercalifragilisticexpialidociously.
Hey, High Priestess is in agreement.
Oh my god.
I'm like 95% sure it's all one person.
Did those accounts just copy paste their same dialogue for the past 10 years over and over and over again?
I talked to, when Rossheim was still around.
It's all one or two
talked to
people.
them
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Rossheim was involved with Stormark for a while. They seemed relatively sure that there was more than one person. Just that they were all so like-minded that they never kind of got outside their own echo chamber, so to speak.
It's like a hive mind of horny Vikings. Where's that Star Trek episode?
Oh man, because when I was involved in Stormark, I know that one of the wives of Harold was actually someone that also was involved in Alexandria under the name of Valeria Gonzalez. And this person was a real person. Like he lives in the DC area. Like we met up for drinks and talked about Stormark like a few years ago. But like I was talking to him the other day and he told me that he wasn't doing anything with Stormark, and I'm like, oh, well, I see the account that you used to manage still post. And he goes, yeah, that wasn't me.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe
Yeah.
Harold's just, or whoever it is, maybe Harold's not even real.
Wow.
Could be.
Maybe he just like accumulates people, and then when they're like, okay, I've kind of had enough of this, he just kind of like lashes on to their account and uses it for his narrative.
Yeah, because I think that some of the accounts were probably started by real people. And then as people drop off from the hobby, as sometimes it happens, he would just like change the login information so that he could
Probably
use it.
just use it. Like, I bet there's some way that he attaches part of his army of post bots onto them, because there's no way one guy can keep up all the activity that you see on the forum checks. But on the other hand, there's no way that you can have like 20 people all use the same corny erotica
Oh yeah, no.
structure in all social dealings. It's just a really maybe this is how Skynet happens. Maybe this is the learning how people work. Maybe Skynet started off as some kinky chat bot on on like a
Oh my God.
XXX site. And this is how the world ends.
Anyone remember Smarter Child back in the AOL Instant Messenger era? All the things that I used to say to that bot. I wish I could apologize to it.
This is its
Yeah.
revenge. It gave birth to the Herald entity, and now here we are. It's
That
its
poor
grand
bot.
master plan. It started the coronavirus. It's going to give us a cure.
Oh.
We'll all trust it, and then it'll dominate the universe.
Oh no.
It's turning the frogs gay. I'm with Alex Jones. I'm an Infowars guy now. Let's buy some testosterone
Oh
and
no.
hunker down, fellas. Eat your neighbors, all that good stuff.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, well, thank you guys for joining me. This was fun. Hope that you guys will come back in future episodes.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And that was our episode. I want to thank Ari, Nate, Nikola, Shyriath, and Ryker for joining what was a really fun conversation. It was really a pleasure to have all of you on. Thank you. So, as this podcast continues, I'm sure I will be making a lot of mistakes, say things that I'm going to regret later, or do things some people might not like, or all of those things in one. In an effort to be open and transparent about it, I want to create a new segment of this show that I've decided to call This Is Why I Suck, in which I will self-flagellate for the pleasure of listeners. God, can you tell I used to be Catholic?
Let me tell you why I suck.
And the subject of today's This Is Why I Suck segment is a little something that I said in the last episode that was interpreted as mean, dismissive, and insulting. I'm gonna put it on here, and let me play a couple minutes of it. Hold on. Okay. Well, that's awesome. I haven't seen a space program be simulated in Micras for a while, and I can't remember who was the last person to. I mean, I know that Natopia has a base on the moon. I know that Bijaro found some weird crap things on the moon, apparently. I was reading through the articles a couple days ago, and I totally have forgotten about the crabs. Our moon is full of crabs, guys.
Maybe. Maybe we'll see. I know the USSO also did some stuff. That's why we got Krasnokoria involved, because they have some expertise in that. So,
yeah, that's right. Okay, and that's what I said. And I'm not going to make any excuses, and I'm just going to apologize. I understand how this came across as mean, as it being at someone's expense. Maybe I stepped out of line with the joke. I didn't mean to be mean or to bring up anything from the past or to work out to whatever resentments I have, which I have none, by the way. I've been coexisting with Bidgero for the last couple of years, and it's been chill. I have no problems with him anymore. I genuinely apologize, and I promise to do better in the future. And if my apology isn't accepted because of pride, well, I'm not gonna go cry in my coffee. So there you have it. I'm genuine in my apology, though, and I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. Okay, so that's the show. I want to thank Nate, Ari, Ryker, Shyriath, and Nikola for joining the call. It was a lot of fun to have you on the show. The 4th episode of Micras has already been recorded. It is in the works. I have been taking a little bit of time in editing things just because I'm learning. This is a lot of fun for me, but it's also a lot of work, and I can only do short bursts of editing and work before I go crazy and set the headphones down. I didn't realize that editing could give you so much listening fatigue. I didn't know that was a thing. Actually, I did know it was a thing, because I can't stand Justin Bieber's music anymore, and it's 100% because of fatigue. But yeah, the next episode of Micras will deal with the recent trends in Micras that go from forum-based activity to wiki-based activity. We'll also talk about micronational economies, tourism at some points, and as usual, we'll get tons of updates from our guests on their micronations. So stay tuned for the next episode of Micras. I am Edgard Carrillo. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support.